to have you all along today. I'm just sort of fiddling here with the GoToWebinar control panel to get myself in a position where I can see everything that I want to see so that I can deliver for you, hopefully, a presentation with punch. I know that I guess that whole thing of wanting to deliver a presentation that either doesn't blend in, or sometimes the ambition is to have it blend in because we are utterly petrified about it being one of those presentations that stands out for the wrong reasons. I know that that's something that sits really deeply with some people, that it causes significant anxiety, and I think that anxiety has been born from having sat in the audience, from having sat through presentations that have lacked punch, that have felt less like they've hit you between the eyes with something really important than they have leaving you feeling like you've been mildly slapped with a wet lettuce. And so what we're on about is how we can deliver a presentation that's memorable and that you are, I guess I spoke recently to someone in L&D who said that you just don't want to be that guy. And I said, sorry, who? And she said, you know, everyone's got a that guy. I don't want to present like that guy, that you get remembered for all the wrong reasons. And it's hard. If delivering a fabulous presentation, if making a speech or even a keynote address that was brilliant was easy, then everyone would be doing it. And if it was also as important as we make out for ourselves, then we would tend to forget that the two bits of feedback that tend to come back most importantly from somebody's presentation or a keynote speech is what the room temperature was like and what the snacks were like before the quality of the presenter. So I guess the thing that I want to encourage you about first up, while we prepare a presentation with punch, is to just relax. It's all right. You know, most people are pretty forgiving. Most audiences are pretty good about presentations unless you offend them. And I'm going to provide you an opportunity today to walk a fine line between saying something provocative and saying something offensive. And I think when we do that, we give our presentations the chance to really stand out. So I guess one of the things that I think is really important about us working together today is that I give you the opportunity to not just make this a presentation. So to that effect, what I want to do is to encourage you to make a decision about whether you're going to be the puncher or the punchee today. You could just let me give it to you. You could let me just go, okay, just, you know, give me the 6 steps and, you know, to preparing a really fantastic presentation, and I can walk away with it and be happy. Or you could make this a different kind of learning experience. You could get involved. So I want you to remember that you've got a GoToWebinar panel, control panel on your screen there for a reason. And it's so that you don't have to treat this like a TV show or a movie. You can get involved. In fact, I really want the people who are in the room right now, and we've got people in the room today. I'm really excited today. We've got people in the room who are from Australia, from New Zealand, and we've also got people who registered from the UK today, which is very exciting. I'd love it if you would just put your hand up for me. If you look on your control panel, there's a button there that looks like the palm of a hand. And if you put your hand up, there we go. I've got Ben doing it straight away, which is fantastic. If you put your hand up, what I can do is I can unmute you and allow you to join in. Now, that's probably going to have Ben quickly putting his hand back down, and I would completely understand that. So what I want you to do is across the webinar, please take avail of those opportunities to put your hand up and get involved here. And if you need to, throw a couple of punches. I don't mind. Let's talk about the things that are important to you so that you can make sense of these key points that I'm making for you. The good part about asking a question is always that I think, you know, Ben wants a prize. Okay, bad luck about that, Ben. You're going to be horribly disappointed. Hopefully the rest of the presentation is less disappointing for you. But one of the good parts about asking a question is that I genuinely reckon that the answering of your question will be of service to the rest of the people who are here. So absolutely get yourself involved and step up. So you can put your hand up, you can use the question box. If you're having any technical difficulties, the amazing Chris, our business manager, is online with us today. And I would strongly encourage you that if you're having any troubles, that you let her know. She'll answer that. If you've got any questions that are about the content that I'm delivering to you today, then by all means whack a question in there, and I'll pause occasionally. You'll see and hear me. I'll pause occasionally and check that question box just to see if there's anything in there that we need to address, and we'll keep moving. So when it comes to delivering a presentation that's fantastic, I think that there are three big whys that we need to answer. So three big reasons that people want to deliver a presentation with punch. And the first one's about you. I have done a lot of work over the years working with schools, and in particular, I speak a lot to teachers around anxiety and how anxiety impacts people's ability to both learn and engage. And anxiety is a horrible, crippling phenomena. And the most common trigger for anxiety is the absence of a plan. So in kids, it's not knowing what's going to happen next. School teachers tell me all the time about the anxious kid in their class who loses the plot and goes bananas if the teacher's away, because all of a sudden the routine has been ripped out from under them. And we're the same. And so when we are trying to build a presentation, I bet that this picture resonates a little bit with you, because we lose sleep over it the night before because we're not quite sure how it's going to go. We're not quite sure if our plan for the presentation is going to stand up. And even we worry about little things like, well, do I have enough content? We usually, when we do that, end up over-preparing. You would have all heard that chestnut in the past about the two biggest fears that people have, public speaking and death, in that order. And I think that most of the fear and anxiety that comes with public speaking is about the absence of a plan. So what we're trying to do today is to deliver for you a repeatable methodology, a plan that you can use to say, if I were to tick off all of these ideas in my presentation, that I could feel confident that I'm going to do well. Confident, to be really honest, being the opposite of being anxious. So we really want to make sure that the you reason for delivering a presentation with punch is achieved. I reckon there's also a them reason though. And what it's about is we're trying here in a presentation to promote thought. So I often think about what are the affects that I would be looking for, what are the feelings that I would be looking for when I'm delivering a presentation out in the audience. Now I try not to focus too heavily on the faces in the audience, because sometimes it's easy for someone amongst them to distract me unnecessarily. But there's a trap for people to think that they're looking for happiness. And that's not the point of a presentation. The point of a presentation, or even a keynote speech, is not just to make people happy. So yeah, we're going to talk about how you can use emotion to emphasize a point very shortly. And those emotions can be positive ones and feel-good emotions. But what I'm looking for is, what's the percentage of the audience who are pulling faces like the ones you can see on the screen at the moment? I'm looking to make people think. I'm looking to see faces of engagement. And what are we talking about when we're talking about engagement? For me, a person who's engaged is either listening, speaking, thinking, or doing. And what I want them to do in a presentation is, I want them to listen and I want them to think. I really want to get under their skin in some way, because I know that if I can do that, it will go towards a more effective presentation being received by them. There was some fabulous research I looked at recently that's about what engages people, what gets people's attention when it comes to training, when it comes to presentations. And 36% of the people who are responding in workplaces around the world, is a global study that was done. 36% of those people said that they are engaged by the frequency of the presentations and the training that they're provided with. And I thought that's probably fair enough. A third of people say, I don't want just one. I need them to come along regularly to really get me engaged in my workplace. 39% said it was about the breadth. So they're saying, don't hit me with the same message every single time. Make sure that I get to learn even about other areas of the business that are outside of my area of responsibility. So it's about the breadth and the variety that can come in those presentations. But 65% of people said it was down to quality. What engages me is the quality of the presentation. And I know that I have generated a fabulous presentation when I see lots of these kinds of faces in the room, people who are genuinely listening, speaking, and then hopefully after it, thinking or doing. The reason that I want to do that is because it allows me to stand out as a presenter, in that things change after the presentation, because what we're trying to do through a presentation is not just entertain, but we're trying to promote behaviour change. Now, what we know about behaviour and about human behaviour is that no behaviour changes randomly. It is all driven by the thinking that precedes it. The fabulous friend and colleague called Darren Hill always says that the best example of that is that nobody in this audience today woke up accidentally on a diet. You wouldn't just eat half a grapefruit accidentally for breakfast, because they're frankly disgusting. So he says you've got to think about, you'd have to be thinking about it first. You might have seen a photo of yourself that you just, oh boy, I'll put on a few kilo, or you might have the jeans that you put on that morning might be a little tighter than you remember putting them on. So it's hugely important that we provoke thought in the people that we're presenting for. And when you do that, when you provoke thought, when you become the sort of presenter that gets under people's skin, you generate behaviour change. And even if you're the sort of person that wants to deliver multiple presentations in or outside of your organisation, it's being memorable by generating thought that is the best way to be top of mind when they want the next presentation run. And then I reckon there's a third why that we need to answer, and that is the us reason. And the us reason is about standing out. Now, for you, as I mentioned, you become the presenter who stands out. There are those three categories that I mentioned when I started the webinar, the ones that blend in, and there are the ones on either side of the blend in group who stand out. You can stand out, of course, for all the wrong reasons. But as a presenter, what we love to do is to stand out as individuals on the other side, which is as a highly effective, a highly inspiring, and a highly thought-provoking presenter. And that's fabulous, because when you do that, you generate behaviour shift, you generate higher levels of engagement with the people that you're working with, and as a result, they stand out. What we know from the research is that organisations with engaged employees who would describe themselves as being engaged as a result of the presentations and the training that they receive outperform organisations where the employees say they are not engaged in their training and their presentations by a whopping 202%. So you double productivity and effectiveness in organisations when you, and thereby they, stand out as a result of your presentations. So that's pretty cool. There are three, I think, really strong imperatives for making sure that you do a fantastic job in your presentations. So then how do you make that happen? So what I would like to do today is to present to you a 6-punch combo. We'll keep that boxing theme going. All right. And punch one is that I want you to hack the context. I want you to say, how is it that I could stand out, and how is it that I could make the context that I have available to me serve the purpose that I have? And if your purpose is to get people to think, to get people to learn, and thereby to get people to change behaviour, then I want you to ask yourself, is the room that I'm walking into to prepare that presentation, is it conducive to that? So the picture that you can see on the screen here is me working with a TAFE organisation, a whole bunch of people who are educators who are interested in adult learning. And I walked in and I just noticed that the room that I was presenting to that day was very sort of theatre-y. There was a lot of seats all converging on a podium at the front of the room. And that the lights were down over the audience as well. It was very dark, and it felt like I was walking into a small cinema. And I thought, okay, so what's the message that I'm sending to people when I stand basically as the person on the screen or the movie and let them sit in the dark with their slightly downward facing seats? What's the message that I'm selling them around how they need to engage? And it pretty much is that you can just sit there and be quiet while I do my thing. That's what movie theatres are set up for. We're actually they're designed so that we feel like we must be quiet, because there's no eye contact, there's no conversation, there's no thinking, there's no body language being exchanged. And I just thought, wow, I'm not sure this room's doing it for me in terms of the way that I want these educators to think about the way that education should happen. So I went, all right. So as I started to talk, I walked away from the podium. I checked with the presenters that I could abandon the mic that they had at the podium, and I could put a little lapel mic on, and they said, yes, we can do that for you. And that was done in 30 seconds. And I just wandered into the audience and took a seat. You can see me in the middle there having a chat. And I started to present from the middle of the room. and the slides up on the screen became things that we would use as impetus for the topics that we were covering. I would often ask them in the audience to just have a chat with the person next to them about what was going on. And I guess what I want you to do is to just take a quick scan of the picture that you can see there. I'm not particularly sure about the young woman that's sort of 2 rows behind me over my left shoulder. She seems a little bored, but most of the other faces that I would suggest are in this picture are engaged ones. They're either thinking, listening, potentially even in this kind of environment, speaking or doing, which is really good, because that's the stuff that generates shift afterwards. I need to do a presentation next week, and I'm a little nervous about it because it's for the National Speakers Association. So I'm going to go to a room on Monday evening with a group of approximately 50 to 100 speakers who are all going to be sitting there critiquing the way that I speak. And I thought, okay, how can I hack this context? Because here's the context that we've got there. They're not going to listen to anything I say. They're just going to watch my craft. And I thought, how can I hack this? So what I'm going to do is, as soon as we start speaking, I know that that room will not have chairs that are bolted down like this. I know that they will have single seats laid out theaterette style, sure enough, with an aisle down the middle. But I'm going to get them to move straight away. We're going to make a dirty big circle, and we're going to work on the project together. Well, the project's going to be that they're not allowed to take notes. I'm going to talk to them about how to deliver a presentation that educates, and we're going to build our notes together on a great big piece of paper on the floor. And at the end of it, they can get up and take a photo so they don't miss out. And I'm just going, you know what, I think I can use that context to deliver something that will allow me to stand out and that will allow my messages to stand out, which is really cool. There's so many things that you can do that impact the context. I sometimes talk to teachers and not just to teachers, but to all of the people I work with. Sometimes I'll just come back after lunch when I'll have removed my jacket and rolled my sleeves up. And I'll ask people if they've noticed a difference in the context. And I say, yeah. And they say, yeah, your jacket's gone. And I said, yeah, it's gone. Yeah. What does that tell you about this afternoon? They go, oh, more relaxed, more quiet, more casual, more conversational. Yep, spot on. I took my jacket off, and suddenly a room of 100 people wants to talk more. That's quite amazing. I can do it right now. I can just change the context of this presentation for just a moment. I can share my webcam with you. Let's see how we go. Let's see if this works for us. It's telling me that it's connecting. There I am. I'm in my lovely, as my wife calls it, my new mustard jumper here. You can see the picture of my family at the AFL Grand Final 2017 in the background there. And you can see that this is where I'm working from today. So I'm not going to keep it on this all the way through because I think it'll be a distraction from the presentation. But I can break up the context just to prove a point. So I don't want you to fall for the trap of thinking that because you walk into a particular context that you have to deliver in it. The first thing that any great speaker, any great educator does is say, how can I make this context do the thing that I want it to do? And I want you to seize real control over that. I want you to hack it and do something with it that gets people to step up. The great part about hacking context, and I think the great part about taking yourself out occasionally of being the guru at the front of the room at the lectern, is that I think what happens is that you make a commitment to collaborative learning. It feels like this is now a learning experience that we're doing together rather than a learning experience that I'm doing to you. And what you get when people are committed to collaborative learning, when that actually starts to happen together, is 3 really important things. You get a deeper reinforcement of the learning, which is just awesome. You get improved motivation, and you also get a more diverse range of ideas and implementations that come from that learning experience. So you get better solutions. See, when people come into an environment that looks a little bit more like a cinema, there's only one solution. It's the one that the person at the front of the room, the great guru, is handing over to you. Yet, when we all of a sudden start working on it together, people start to think in a much more higher level way. It's low level to receive and then to replicate, but it's high level to say, oh, I wonder what I could do with that, because that's a design imperative that you're getting people to do. And I reckon that's pretty cool. So I'm going to stop sharing my webcam because I'm going to change the context again. Back into my presentation. Hack the context. It's the most powerful thing you can do to try and make your presentation pack a punch. Number 2 is I want you to pick your pedagogy. I want you to think about how it is that you're going to make learning happen in that presentation. What's your methodology for ensuring that learning happens, and can you repeat and stick to that methodology so that people feel comfortable in there? So pedagogy is basically it's a description that educators, particularly those in schools, use regularly. It refers to how you can get kids to learn. There's one for adults called andragogy, but it's a funny word that I just never hear much of, so I'm going to stick with pedagogy. How do I define pedagogy? Pedagogy for me is a combination of the art of learning and the science of teaching. I actually take that really seriously. So for me, the science is done by the presenter. The science is done by it's an experiment. It's a hypothetical. So what you do is you say, I reckon that if I combine these points in these ways, that it will have this outcome. And then you take the scientific method of basically looking to disprove your hypothesis. You say, can I find out where that's completely untrue? Or perhaps, great, it is true. But it's the learners who do the art. It's the people who are on the other side who you want to inspire into action, and you don't know what they're going to do with it, and we've got to let that go. When a great presenter isn't prescriptive. A great presenter provides the tools. A great presenter provides the impetus and the inspiration to go out there and do something fantastic with what you've provided with them that you couldn't have possibly imagined. We call it emergent phenomena. So what's my pedagogy? What do I do when I'm delivering a presentation? I have a two-step pedagogy because I'm a reasonably simple person, and long convoluted models and theories while I'm standing on a stage delivering a presentation to people are very difficult for me to keep in mind. So my two-step pedagogy is make a point, tell a story. So I have decided that my pedagogy, for even if I need to develop a whole day of training, let alone a 1 hour presentation, my whole pedagogy around that is I'm going to make some important points, but within it, between each of those points, I'm going to tell a story that allows people to make sense of things. That's what stories do. I take great inspiration from, in Australia, our Indigenous brothers and sisters when it comes to this concept, because in Indigenous culture, they actually don't even tell you the point. They just tell you the story and expect you to work out the point. But I think that stories in Australia make a lot of sense to people. I think that they matter to people more than we know. So the point, basically, I have two kind of ideas with my point. One is that my point has to be relevant. So it has to be something that they can go, yeah, actually, that really matters to us, this point. I need to be speaking to something that's very central to either their purpose or their practice and the way that they're working every day. Or when it comes to developing a really important point, it's got to be controversial. So it's got to be a point that picks a fight. I often say that when I'm working with people that I have 5 non-content based intentions for my presentation, because if I focus on content, I'm mindful that the research tells us that in any 90-minute presentation that approximately people commit to long-term memory around 7 seconds. So it doesn't give me a lot to work with, does it? So in that environment, what I need to do is to wrap positive affect and experience around my points, because then people are more likely to commit them to longer term memory, and they're more likely to commit, therefore, to a change in behaviour. So what are my non-content intentions that I have for any learning geared presentation? First of all, it's to inspire. So I'm always up there up front about the fact that I'm trying to inspire people. That's something that particularly in Australia we cringe at. People go, oh no, don't be one of those people that's going to be rah-rah and walking over hot coals at morning tea and that kind of poor, horrible, sort of somewhat American approach to inspiring people. You see, Australians aren't inspired so much by the rah-rah, but they are inspired by story. If you get the chance to tell a story or hear a good story, then that's a really inspiring experience for people in our culture. Second one is I challenge. And I tell people often that the challenge is to put your own work on the table in front of you during this presentation. If you haven't got a table, put it on your lap, put it in your hands, show it to the person next to you and examine it for a little while. Have a good look at it, see what you can find. The challenge I'm putting in front of you today is to find some things in your own presentation skills that you either need to cultivate and preserve, things that you go, wow, I'm actually quite good at this. I need to never lose that. For instance, I'm good at storytelling. I'm never going to lose it. I'm never going to deliver a presentation without telling a story. If you think about it, I've already told you about 3 or 4 today already. So that's staying. There are some things that I need to change. There are some things that I need to go, I just got to keep working on that. And then occasionally there are some things that need to go. I spot that there's a part of my work that is not adding up at the moment, and it's not delivering, it's not serving me in some way, and that's got to go, and I've got to leave that behind without any shame about having used it even 100 times before. It's okay. So that's the challenge I put to people. And then, like I said before, the controversial point reminds me that I need to provoke. I need to pick a fight. I need to say that something needs to change. There is something going on right under your nose that isn't good enough, and it needs to get out of here. And to be honest, people love it. You know, it's people love it when you stand strongly in your own point, because that means you're genuine about your intention to stand out and to make a difference. The fourth thing I look to get people to do is to strengthen. So I'll let them know we're here to make sure that we are spotting those things in our pile that we can never lose. And there are also, I'm there to help people connect. So in every webinar, in every presentation, I'm utterly determined that there will be opportunity for people to connect. So I provided it to you today right at the start by saying, put your hand up, ask a question, no problem. I'm really happy for this not to be a one-way exercise today. So making sure that you do that, okay, to give opportunity for people to just have a quick chat about something as they go to answer a curly question. And I think that if your presentation is inspiring, challenging, provocative, strengthening, and connective in the way that you design it, people will remember it. So your content has a chance of sticking if you make a real commitment to delivering through a pedagogy that creates positive affect and positive feeling for people. So punch number 3 is, quite ironically, punch number 3 refers to the number 4, and it's 4-point communication. This is something that I'm utterly stealing today from the amazing Michael Grinder, an expert in communication and body language. And what Michael tells us is to be very wary of the myth of eye contact. So most people will tell you when you are presenting that you need to provide eye contact to the audience. If you're looking at your notes, if you're looking anywhere else in the room apart from directly into the eyes of the people who are sitting in those seats, that you will betray them in some way and they will see weakness and confidence in you, and it's an absolute lie. So Grinder speaks to 4 points of communication that we need to just flit effortlessly between as we're delivering a presentation. So this is me delivering a presentation to a room full of about 400 people recently, and I was very nervous about this one. But one of the things that I love about this pick that came out of it is the fact that I'm not facing them. I'm walking away. I'm delivering a little bit of eye contact. I'm sort of looking over the top of them as well, because I was really purposeful during this presentation about using 4-point communication. So the 4 points that Grinder refers to are, number 1 is to put your eyes down, which what it does, and this sounds really odd, doesn't it, that we're going to deliver a presentation but I'm going to look at the floor. What it does is it provides people with a break. Nobody can stare at you, as good looking as you may be. Nobody can stare directly at you. You're like the sun. You can't be stared at directly for an extensive period of time or you go blind. So I'm mindful of giving myself and others a break. The master of using the first point of communication in looking down was the American President Barack Obama. Obama was intent whenever he delivered an address to the nation. And you may even be able to remember this. Whenever he walked down that long corridor to the podium to speak about something incredibly important that had just happened, Obama would look down at the lectern before he looked up and he said, "My fellow Americans." Now, a lot of people thought that he was looking at notes. Obama spoke almost exclusively without notes. But what he did was he was just mindful of just give people a break, because I'm going to expect their attention for a couple of minutes after this. So they've already seen him come out of the room and walk down the corridor. They've already been looking at him for something. They're using up the seconds that they've got to stare at the sun, and he needs them to be staring at the right time. So he gives them a break before he delivers the really important message. So that's point 1, is to look down, give people a break. Number 2, second point of for your eyes is eye contact, and you need to use it. I'm not anti-eye contact. I'm saying that you just can't over-obsess about it. So from time to time, you do need to acknowledge the people that you're in the room with. And I prefer, with the way that I'm making eye contact, is not to make generic eye contact, but to make specific eye contact. Speak directly to someone in the room. And while you're speaking, just, wander around, allow it to be the first person can be down in the front on the left, the second person can be 4 rows back on the right, and just move it around. But I love to make a personal connection with the people that I'm presenting to. 3-point communication, the third point of communication, I should say, is a place within the room. So you may speak to a flip chart, or you might turn around and look up at your slide deck that's on the screen and make a point that's looking in the direction of a particular impetus in the room. And again, this is about giving people a break without distracting them from the intellectual point that you're looking to make. And then the 4th point of communication, this is the one that people often forget, is a point that is out of the room. Now, people will sit there and go, well, what do you mean? How on earth can you sort of put eye contact towards a point that's out of the room? I'm often doing it within stories, and I will say, there was this time that I was working with a whole group of people down in Alice Springs, and I put my hand up and I'll look out the window and my hand will point towards this fictional direction of Alice Springs, and people look. People actually go and have a look out the window like they can see Alice Springs from out of a Melbourne training room, but then they come back, and the combination of being able to look down and give people a break, to make eye contact to establish personal connection, to seek relevance and other impetuses for learning within the room, and then to make aspirational or to make sense of key points through story by getting them to imagine a place outside the room, is a wonderful combination. I can't speak highly enough of Grinda's work. It has helped me an enormous amount to be able to deliver a presentation that genuinely lands with people and makes people feel that time flies. And that's a really great part of any presentation, is when people come up to me and go, wow, I could have listened to you for so much longer. That's the greatest compliment that anyone can give me. And when I use 4-point communication, I make it easy for people to sit in my presence while I'm providing that presentation. Okay, three punches left for you. Punch 4 is to get them involved, is to get them engaged. And I'm going to be really honest, I did that to you today, didn't I? Ben jumped in straight away with putting his hand up and writing a little comment there, which is fantastic, because it primes people to help me out. Primes people to make the presentation a combined effort, and many hands certainly do make light work when it comes to delivering a presentation. If you can get people rowing with you rather than crossing their arms and looking at the clock and just slumping back in their chair and wondering how long it is until you're going to finish so they can get some blood back in their posterior, then that's a good thing. Then that's a good thing. I often I prime people for that engagement. So when I deliver a presentation, I often begin it because I take a little bit of fun. I take a little bit of the Mickey out of myself about my history of being a school principal. And so when I begin a presentation, I'm often getting up there and I say, good morning, everyone. And then they, well, that's not very good. Don't you know the primary school principal, good morning, that you're supposed to present your eyebrows and lower your voice and say, good morning, Mr. Voice. And then I take them through this amazing story about how when I opened a new school, we changed the way that we said good morning in that school. And I get them up and I teach them the way that we said good morning at Rosebery Primary School, which was to say it with excitement and enthusiasm and then clap twice. And I talk about how the preschool kids who were barely 4 years of age, they got this right the second go. So you're under pressure, you better get this right. And before I know it, I've got several hundred people saying, good morning, Mr. Voigt. And I get people coming up to me after the presentation and going, good morning, Mr. Voigt, and clapping back to me. It sticks with them because they were engaged. They weren't passive in the learning experience. So I want you to think a little bit about, and I guess one of the points I'm going to make shortly is about not over-preparing content. But one of the things that I want you to do is to actually make sure that if you've got a choice between squeezing in one more point and squeezing in an opportunity for your audience to engage, then please take the latter. make sure that you get your audience engaged. And my choice is that I would like to do that right at the beginning of my presentation, because I think I have a theory here, a hypothesis that I'm still, I guess, working a little bit on whether it's true or not. My hypothesis is that if I get them engaged at the start, they will step in and help me row this presentation in the right direction throughout. And when they do, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Okay, 2 more punches. Number 5, punch number 5, hit them in the feels. And the 2 emotions that I found, and this comes from some advice from one of Australia's foremost presenters in Matt Church. Matt speaks a lot to 2 emotions that help presentations really stand out, and they are humour and drama. Now, my experience has been that this is where we unfortunately have some gender stereotype creep into presenters. I wonder if you can think about it and even just write it in the question box while we're going here. I'll talk about it further in a minute. Which one do you think males head to? Do they go to humour or drama? Which one do you think females are more inherently drawn to present around? Humour or drama? So give me your answer there and see what you reckon there. Yeah, now I'm looking at Eleanor's answer, Ben's answer there, and you are 100% right. So the defaults that tend to happen is that the males tell the jokes and the females tell the sad stories. And to be honest, it is absolute nonsense. I watched last night when I crawled into bed. I've become, like many people, a bit of a Netflix addict. I've got my favourite shows that I've been working through. So I managed to get through. If you're looking for something around humour and drama that could really get your attention, 2 have really caught mine lately. Number 1 was I watched Ricky Gervais' Afterlife on a 3-hour flight from Townsville to Melbourne last week, and 6 episodes, 6 30-minute episodes in the entire flight. It was brilliant stuff, and a great contrast, a great example of what humour and drama can do in a presentation. But I think the one that emphasised it better was I watched the Netflix presentation called Call to Courage by Brené Brown. And Brené is a researcher on shame. Ugh, that sounds like it's a bit dramatic, doesn't it? The way that Brown is able to speak for over an hour on her topic of shame and vulnerability in such a way that the humour and the drama interchange to maximise engagement is artful. It is absolutely an example in brilliant presenting. The whole documentary that you can watch there is Brown on a stage, and that's all she does. She stands on a stage and she speaks. So she's delivering a presentation, but the combination, the recipe of humour and drama that she's using is absolutely brilliant. And I try hard to emulate that full range. So I'm not going to be stereotyped by being the male that gets up there and tells the corny, somewhere between dad and inappropriate jokes. I interchange between humour and drama as evenly as I possibly can. So I tell a story, for instance, that's humorous about a group of kids who came back in after lunch and they were all angry with each other and they'd been telling horrible jokes about each other's mums and how we got to that point and the things that they said and how they were going to keep each other in at lunchtime. There's all these sort of gags all the way through, and everyone loves that story. And then I tell the story occasionally too of a school that I was working with who we did some really serious training around how you do relationships, how you repair conflict, how you deal with problems when they arise in the school. And then on the weekend, one of their students passed away. Unfortunately, it was a horrible domestic violence incident, and he'd been murdered by his own father. And my kids actually went to that school. It was incredibly emotional, and I remember going in there to help some of those teachers. And boy, it was the most devastating room I've ever walked into. And I tell the story about how we began that day the task of taking these students from a position where they were grief-stricken, because we don't want them to stay in grief forever, about what's the systematic approach that we chose to slowly fold in expectations back into their lives while we were maintaining high levels of support for them. And often when I tell that story, there's barely a dry eye in the house. And I'm going to be really honest with you. There's times when I tell that story and I struggle to keep my own eyes dry. But I do so because I know the effect that that story has. If you're going to prepare a presentation that is all about delivery, which means if you're going to make more points than you are going to tell stories, then I reckon nobody's going to get your points. I reckon you're going to deliver a presentation that has been designed entirely for you. And that's a really selfish thing to do. But if you can say, what I'm going to do is to make sure that each point has either its own humour or its own drama, then some pretty amazing stuff starts to happen. And it's not just in the feedback that you get about your presentation, it's in what people do after the presentation too, which means you've taken a very strong learning bent into the presentation that you're delivering. And then punch number 6 is basically over prepare the how. There is almost nothing worse for people than seeing someone on stage who has something they need to tell you, but they don't know how to say it. Even worse, perhaps, is someone who has something they want to tell you and they know that they are going to tell it to you and they are going to give you an enormous amount of detail about it, and they are going to work through 115 slides in a 2-hour presentation, and all of them are very text rich, and they are going to read every word on every one of those slides to you. I don't care what you're going to present. In fact, I don't want you to just prepare for what you're going to present. And indeed, I think if you do, you're going to sit up late at night because you're always going to worry that you don't have enough. You're always going to want to add a little more just to be sure. And then you're going to find yourself in a horrible, uncomfortable, scrambling position where what you'll do towards the end of the presentation is disappoint people by saying to them, oh, look, I'm mindful that I've run out of time, so I'm just going to skip these 3 slides right in front of you. And they go, well, look, that looked really interesting. Oh, it's gone. And I can tell you now that the feedback that you'll get for that will be poor. So I often tell my wonderful wife, Anthea, that this is when I lapse into what we call Ukrainian mode. My wife's family are Ukrainian, and there's never enough. So whenever we eat with the family, there's always something extra that has to go on the table. They are extraordinary cooks. The food that we eat is it is sublime. I love going to eat with this family, and I do not understand for the life of me why they prepare an enormous banquet of the most incredible food they've got, but someone still walks in right at the end with a bucket of KFC and puts it on the table. And it's because they always feel they need a little more. We don't. We don't need a little more, and you don't need a little more when it comes to your presenting. So I want you to prepare far more for how you will present than what you will present. And really, the how is about whether you are going to land those first 5 punches. The great news about focusing on how is that you'll develop a Brené Brown style approach that will engage people at the highest possible level. And the great news about stuff that you don't say because you didn't over-prepare on the what, you didn't over-prepare on content, you over-prepared on your presentation style and pedagogy, the great news is that they don't know what you left out. So when I over-prepare the what, they see the 3 slides at the end that I skipped through and said, so really sorry, I haven't got time to do that with you today. It's disrespectful. But if I over-prepare on the how, and I happen to finish a little early, and I've still got a couple of things up my sleeve that I can speak to just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing and using the time available to me, they don't know what I left out. They don't know what I didn't speak to. So they're not disappointed about that. And I've fulfilled on my commitment to create really strong, positive, healthy affect in the room, and therefore the content has a chance of landing. So there we go. That's basically, there's the gist. There's the 6-punch combo for how I think you can prepare a presentation with punch. Don't run away yet. Don't run away yet. What I want to do first, what I want to do before you go is just give you an opportunity to make either a comment or to put something in the question box, or to even put your hand up if you're feeling so brave that you might do something like that. I don't know whether you're picking up from me here, but I've had to be a little brave with my presentation today as well, because of course, just outside my Real Learners office today, the decision has been made that 2 o'clock while I'm delivering a webinar is the right time to mow the lawn. So I've had to work my way through that. So I want to give you an opportunity to be brave as well, and to step up and answer, put your hand up, or to make a comment, or to write a question in the question box. While you're thinking about what that might be, I want to remind you about next month's webinar and what we're talking about next month. This is probably my favourite topic to talk about, because I think we've hit an incredibly important fork in the road when it comes to the way we do learning. Learning used to be about knowledge. Learning used to be about how it is that you can take something that you know and put it in the hands of other people who don't yet know it. And the age of knowledge being the imperative around learning is dead. It is over. It died around 1981 with the invention of the internet, because all of a sudden, every little bit of information that you need is available at your fingertips just by pressing that app on your phone with a great big G on it. You can get what you need. So therefore, organisations that focus on just handing over information waste their time. When it comes to learning development and to research and training, what we need to do is to be able to know what are the skills that we are training people up to use, so that they can handle the enormous amount of information that's available to them. So I really want you to give some serious thought to coming along to that webinar. We're going to show you we're going to show two things. One is, first of all, what are those skills? What do you need to have your head up about, are the things that people really need? And secondly is, how on earth do you teach it? Because can I tell you, when it comes to pedagogy, and I thank you, Eleanor, for your comment there about pedagogy finally making sense. It's a funny word, that one. And she's excited to try and figure out hers, which is just fantastic. But the pedagogy that you need to deliver knowledge is different to the pedagogy that you need to develop skills, and indeed, again, different to the ones you need to develop values in the people that you work with. And this is about the skill set that you need to do that. So it's going to be an exciting webinar. I couldn't help myself. I've already started planning it and putting it together. So I hope that it's something that you'll come along to and you'll enjoy as well. Before you go, do not leave empty-handed. So make sure that you download the slide deck from today. I'm just going to go back in. I'm just going to read out Ben's question. Interesting point in relation to collaboration. I found that in most learning settings, the teacher presenter is there to deliver something specific or defined, and participants expect to be told the answers. Do you have some other examples of how you've broken through that expectation so that people become participative? Yeah, Ben, I have a whole heap of different, what we call cooperative learning structures that I get people to work through. To give you an example of one, I call one talking chips. So what that is a structure where I might provide for the people that I'm presenting to a provocative question. And it could be, for instance, it could be a summary. So it could be, over the last 20 minutes or so, we've been covering these topics. Could you have a talk about what you think is the most important things that come out of that for you? And I just give them, they've all got 3 poker chips, and I get them to speak. And every time you say a sentence, you've got to throw a chip in. And what happens is that somebody runs out of chips quickly, and you've got to wait. You got to shut up. And what happens is, when I do that, is that we don't have a hog that takes over the participation. We don't have a log who just sits there and does nothing. We don't have people who are, frankly, a little bit pissed off with both of them. We get people who are cogs. They're working together to be able to do that. So I factor it into my presentation to leave time for people to make sense of that. Now, that's a summary type approach, but you can also do that from a design perspective. So you could use talking chips to say to people, so we've covered these 3 points here. What I want you to do over the next few minutes using talking chips is to design a new way to use that information to impact process in your organisation. And people go, oh, okay, I get that, and they start to actually get something out of the presentation rather than just sit and receive. So again, I guess this sort of touches on a few of those dot points there, Ben, around hacking the context, around making it more about them than about you, about I was just looking here at number 4, which is to make sure that you get them engaged. And I think that if I get a combo like that going, I can develop a presentation that very quickly sends the message to the people that I'm working with: don't expect to sit and listen today. You know, you're not just sitting there as little cups that apparently wait for me to fill up with it with knowledge and information. We're doing the work together today. And the great news is that people groan when they first leave their seat, and then afterwards they come up and tell you how fantastic it was. I'm hoping that answered your question, Ben. Thank you very much for the provision of it. Download the slide deck from today, please, guys. I really want you to have that. It's in the handout section. So jump into the GoToWebinar control panel before you log out today, and make sure that you get that in your hot little hand before you go. Hey, thanks so much for coming along, everyone. Give us a yell if there's anything that you think that we can do to help you in your work and in your organisation to be able to do this work. If you want us to come along and train your people on how to deliver a fantastic presentation, even around some of those skills that we're going to be talking about next month, or if you want me to come and speak to you about how learning and development can be completely transformed in your company, then drop us a line, give us a call, do one of those things, have a look at our work, and make sure you come along next month for the skill set. All right, I'll let you off the hook, guys. Thanks so much for coming along. Really appreciate you being a part of it. Talk to you soon.